Welcome to this week's Indie Dev Showcase, highlighting the many indie game demos and submitted games we play here on the channel. If you'd like to submit a game for a future piece, please get in touch. And we are starting off with the game, The Dungeon Beneath. This is a game that I got a press key for a while ago, and after playing it, definitely falls into that kind of hidden gem category of a game that has a really interesting concept. The developers describe this as a roguelike auto battler, and that's not too far off the mark. Our concept here is that we need to build a party of characters in order to basically keep delving into this dungeon, and at the end we're going to basically fight some kind of evil Lovecraftian god. Now, the characters themselves are given to you randomly, but they're all fixed characters based on different races as well as their kind of profession or use. The challenge of the Dungeon Beneath is that each character is essentially like a card in a deck builder. They have a specific utility and purpose, and your mission is to assemble the best party that you can in order to maximize on their strengths, as well as make use of a variety of artifacts and items that will change their properties. Now, at the beginning of the game, you choose your hero or leader. That's a character on the far left, as you can see right there. And if your leader dies, it is game over. Now, what makes things very challenging is how combat works. If a character on either side attacks a row that has no units in it, that damage immediately gets transferred to the leader. And again, if the leader of either party dies, then that party loses. So you have to manage not only what units you take, but where they will best fit in terms of your party. Some characters can only be in the back row and front row, while others are a little bit more open like that. And characters can level up to 2 times per run, improving their stats and sometimes changing the utility of their abilities. And the game has a very good variety of characters, from summoners to buffers, characters who gain more damage or they get a free attack when they get armor or when they take damage, and all that then gets further synergized or adjusted based on the items that you find. And the game, I think, has a really great feel to it along those lines. This is more about you planning as opposed to you just, doing rapid clicking and APM. With that said, my big problem with the Dungeon Beneath is that the game itself is very RNG dependent. You see, because you are essentially locked to your characters, the earlier or the quicker you can get your full party up to the level that, get them all synergized, makes the run a lot easier. But because everything is just given to you randomly and you cannot kind of quote-unquote hold or have reserved characters to swap in and out, it means that you're kind of going to be in that period of just chasing. And if you don't get at least a reasonable party before kind of like the first actual boss fight, you're going to lose. The game does feature a persistent unlock, similar to other roguelikes, that the better you play, the more score you get, and then that score is used to unlock additional classes, items, and so on. The game has received many updates since its release, including adding in multiple new game pluses, new bosses, and encounters like that. And I really did enjoy this one. I think this is definitely a clear diamond in the rough, and I would love to see this kind of design iterated on, and maybe being done more with updates as well. But if you are a fan of turn-based roguelikes or, again, auto-battler kind of designs, definitely check out The Dungeon Beneath. For our next game, this is Buildings Have Feelings Too. And from the outside, this looks like it would be more of a city builder-esque kind of design, but it plays more like a light kind of puzzle management sim. But our concept seems like something straight out of a Pixar movie, where buildings are sentient. They have wants and needs and hopes and dreams. And as technology begins to evolve at the turn of the century, it's up to you to manage this neighborhood and keep the buildings relevant and happy. And yeah, it's just the sheer like cuteness factor. Watching buildings with little arms and legs move around is definitely a delight. So this game is kind of like a very basic puzzle style in which buildings will respond based on what is next to them or within a certain radius of their construction. When they're near certain things that they like, they can improve their building and kind of evolve into a different type or a different class, thereby changing what they put out and what resources they need. So the challenge of the game is basically using the buildings that you have and constructing new ones in order to complete specific goals, keep everybody happy, and move along to kind of the next bit. The problem with this game is that if you're hoping for more of a city builder in terms of free-form kind of constructing and figuring things out as you go, the game seems very linear in that respect. It also felt like one of those games that was designed around a gamepad functionality first as opposed to a keyboard and mouse, and it was a little bit weird to control. I know there's also other people having issues about that on their review page. Unfortunately, if you were hoping for more, again, of a city builder or a challenge along those lines, Buildings Have Feelings 2 doesn't quite get there. But if you're looking for a very charming game, something that you can kind of like zone out to play, that kind of thing, I would say at least give this one a check and see if it appeals to you or not. Now we have the game Square Keeper. This is from a developer that submitted from itch, and I believe it was designed for mobile first, although it can be played on the PC. This is a puzzle game where the concept is that each quote-unquote level or room here has a set of enemies and a set of cards for us to use. The cards themselves are limited, as you can see at the bottom, and they each correspond to doing something, such as attack and move, just move, block, and so on and so forth. Your mission in each room is to figure out what is the correct order of actions in order to kill all the enemies, and make your way to the exit to move on to the next one. And as the game goes on, the complexity grows, the number of cards you'll need to use will as well, and you kind of get the picture there. And this is one of those games that it is a little bit on the basic side, especially for kind of the people who watch the channel here, but I found it to be on the delightful side of things. If you're looking for another kind of puzzle style game that definitely has some challenge to it, there are hard levels which we really didn't get a chance to look at during our spotlight, I would say give this one a check. I think you can download the free demo still from itch, and there'll be links to it as well as to all the games that I've played on this video in the description down below. But with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have 3 more games to look at for this week's spotlight. And if you're interested in my thoughts on design, then check the following out. For entry-level students, we have 20 essential games to study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with free-to-play coming in 2022. For our next game, we have Tauronos. This is a top-down kind of action-adventure style game, where we play as a man trapped in the labyrinth by the Minotaur. And to get out, we're going to explore chapter by chapter, area by area. Each stage has its own kind of specific challenges, as well as adding in more puzzles and things to deal with. When the Minotaur does show up eventually, you cannot directly fight it, and instead we'll have to do ways of slowing it down, as well as get out of each area before it catches up and, of course, murders you. The game does feature different difficulties, including kind of a quote-unquote Iron Man mode where you have a number of lives in order to beat the entire game, or you'll start back at 0. Now, the game has an interesting idea, but I do have several problems with it. The first is, as you can tell by these screenshots, it is oppressively dark, and it's incredibly difficult to kind of spot not only where you're supposed to be going, but also traps and other hazards. The other point this game has is that it makes a similar, I think, design mistake that I saw with Condemned 2. that you have set levels that you cannot return to, but there are permanent upgrades hidden throughout each one. And if you're not careful, you can miss out on something very important, such as increased movement speed, or, I don't know, something like being able to have more vision or lighting in these levels. It is a decent action-adventure game, and I would suggest, if you are interested in it, to not play it on the Iron Man difficulty. Because you are dealing with linear levels, it means you're just having to repeat the same things over and over again. So, decent game, and I think there is something here if you don't mind some of the annoyances and, again, the low lighting. For our next game, this is Insurmountable. And I really like the concept of this one. This is a roguelike that's all about climbing a mountain. Our story is that we have challenged ourselves to try and climb the most dangerous peaks in the world. And we're going to do that one turn at a time. So the mountains themselves are procedurally generated in terms of their layout, obstacles, as well as what items and points of interest you can find. You have to constantly monitor your body heat, your oxygen, as well as your energy, and you also have kind of like a luck stat as well. Now, the game is played turn-based. Once you set up a turn, it will tell you exactly how much of your resources you're going to use to make it to that position. You will also come to various events, and the events themselves will have different outcomes, either based on luck, or if you have certain tools and items that you either found or you brought with you to the mountain itself. As you climb, you'll also unlock perks upon leveling up, and these perks can give you a short-term boost, such as reducing the amount of energy you use when you're climbing up, able to survive more in the cold, etc., etc. Each stage will have kind of the quote-unquote danger zone, where you're nearing the peak and you're going to be constantly using up oxygen as well as losing body heat, and you'll have to work fast to make it to the top and then work your way back down to base camp to then continue to the next track. There is some persistence in terms of unlocking new starting professions, I believe, but the runs themselves are set up campaign style. So however you did on Peak 1 will then carry over resources and experience-wise into Peak 2 and rinse and repeat. Like I said, I think this is a brilliant concept for a game. I'd love to see more of an action take on it as well. My problem with Insurmountable is that it very much relies more on RNG and less on player interaction. You see, you are constantly going to be consuming resources, and much like a lot of the other roguelikes and roguelites we've played, it's very hard to win, and it's very easy to start that downward spiral. Once you start losing one of your 4 core stats, bad events will happen to you, much like a curious expedition. Whenever something really bad happens, it's going to cost you one of your health points. That's the red bar you see at the bottom of the screen. And when that runs out, well, your run ends in failure. And with Insurmountable here, it can be sometimes very hard to tell just what exactly your strategy should be, because you are very much limited in terms of what perks you get upon level up, as well as what the items you find. So I had a case, or I had a run where I was basically like swimming in sleeping bags, but I couldn't find an oxygen tank to, well, literally save my life. And this is one of those titles that, again, because of how unique it is, it may not appeal to people looking for more of a traditional roguelike or roguelite. But I would suggest, if you are a fan of the genre and you don't mind the randomness and RNG getting in the way, I would say definitely give this at least a check, just to see like how developers did this, and maybe it will resonate with you. Now, we did play this at 1.0, and I don't know if the game has received any balance updates or content updates since then. But, as I said, very fascinating concept I would like to see done more in. For our final game of the Spotlight this week, this is Hoplegs. Now, the footage you're seeing is taken from early access, but we did play it at 1.0 as well. And what we have with this one is, imagine a pogo stuck or getting over it, not inherently designed around rage. We play as a wizard who is rushing to get to the castle to warn the king of danger, but their teleportation spell has gone awry. And we've, the fly, I guess, combined with a box of junk. But we still need to make it there. So to do that, we're going to take, well, our miscellaneous legs and bounce our way across. So this game is entirely physics driven, with each leg or each side of the box corresponding to a different button, as you can see. Your actual momentum and velocity will be based on not only your speed, but also how you're angling your various legs as you are moving. So this is one of those games, as you're watching this footage, you will know, I think, very quickly if this is the game for you or if you're going to stay very far away from it. The entire physics of this game is all going to be factored into the different tech that you can make use of, from wall bouncing to swinging around on certain moving platforms, and even sliding-based challenges. For added fun or nightmare, you can also play this in co-op, and the game features a unique co-op campaign that is designed around 2 players, and who may or may not be friends at the end of the play. We did actually do that one on stream, I think, for and I, and it was a lot of fun. So with Hoplegs here, this is one of those games, I think, the concept, I think, is brilliant. It is not inherently a rage game. Your character is very precise, despite, again, the use of the physics and the different controls or the different buttons to your legs. Now, with that said, with a game like this, if you're hoping for an evolution in terms of the obstacle and kind of mechanical or design of it, that's not what this game is about. It is very much a what you hop is what you get kind of game. But I would say this is definitely a must play if you are not easily frustrated and you've been looking for a fairer version of the kind of, I guess, explicitly janky style games from, Getting Over It and so on. So, with that said, we're going to wrap up this week's showcase here. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, check out our Discord and Patreon link down below. If you are a developer working on a game and want me to take a look at, please reach out. And as always, come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we study the art and science of games. And until then, take care.